My husband said he had to work late, but his office was dark when I drove by. I called and asked, "How's work?" He said, "Busy, can't talk," but I heard moaning in the background. I checked his car's GPS, and what I saw stopped my heart. He was at my sister's house. My own sister, Karen, who I'd trusted my whole life. The woman who was my maid of honor. The woman who held my hand through both my miscarriages. She was sleeping with my husband. Let me back up and tell you how I got to this moment. Because this story doesn't start with the GPS tracker. It doesn't even start with my marriage. It starts in a small bedroom in Detroit, Michigan, where two little girls promised each other they'd always be best friends, no matter what. Karen was 5 and I was 8. We were sharing a twin bed because our parents couldn't afford 2 beds yet. We just moved into a new apartment after my dad lost his job at the factory. Karen had her arms wrapped around me and whispered, "Jen, promise me we'll always be sisters. Not just regular sisters, but best friend sisters." I squeezed her tight and promised, always. No matter what happens, we're a team. Sisters before misters. We giggled at that phrase. We'd heard it on a TV show and thought it was the funniest, most important rule in the world. Sisters before misters. We said it all the time growing up. When boys tried to come between us in high school, when we'd fight over stupid things like clothes or the last cookie. Sisters before misters. It was our motto, our promise, our sacred vow. That promise lasted for 38 years. Until it didn't. My name is Jennifer Marie Thompson, though after I got married I became Jennifer Davidson. I'm 46 years old now, and I'm sitting in a house that used to feel like a home, but now just feels like a museum of broken promises and shattered dreams. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Karen and I grew up close, the way sisters do when they only have each other. Our parents worked long hours. Our dad drove a truck after the factory closed, gone for days at a time. Our mom worked double shifts as a nurse to make ends meet. So Karen and I learned to take care of each other. I'd help her with homework. She'd help me pick out clothes for school. I'd braid her hair. She'd make me laugh when I was sad. When I was 13 and got my first period, I was terrified. Mom was at work, and I didn't know what to do. 10-year-old Karen sat on the bathroom floor with me, held my hand, and told me everything was going to be okay, even though she had no idea what was happening either. When I was 16 and my boyfriend broke up with me right before prom, Karen stayed home with me, made popcorn, and we watched movies all night. When Karen was 15 and didn't make the cheerleading squad, I held her while she cried and told her she was better than all those girls anyway. We weren't perfect sisters. We fought like all siblings do. I was jealous when Karen got more attention from boys in high school. She was jealous when I got into a better college. I borrowed her favorite sweater and ruined it. She told Mom about the time I snuck out to a party. Normal sister stuff. But at the end of the day, we always came back to each other, always. When I was 22 and Karen was 19, our parents died in a car accident. A drunk driver hit them head-on on the highway. They died instantly, together. At least they went together, everyone said, like that was supposed to make it better. Karen and I were devastated. We only had each other now. No parents, no grandparents who were still alive. No aunts or uncles nearby, just us. We clung to each other during that time. We planned the funeral together. We sorted through our parents' belongings together. We cried ourselves to sleep in our childhood bedroom together. And we made a new promise. We'd always be there for each other. We'd never let anything come between us. We'd honor our parents by staying close, by being the family they'd raised us to be. For 14 years after their deaths, we kept that promise. We talked on the phone every single day. We had weekly lunch dates. We spent every holiday together. When I got engaged to Mark, Karen was more excited than I was. She threw me the most beautiful bridal shower. She helped me address 150 wedding invitations. She held my bouquet during the ceremony and told me I was the most beautiful bride she'd ever seen. When Karen went through bad breakups, I was there with wine and ice cream and tissues. When she got her first apartment, I helped her move and paint and decorate. When she got promoted at work, I threw her a celebration dinner. We were each other's person, each other's emergency contact, each other's safe place. I thought that would never change. I thought our bond was unbreakable. I was wrong. But let me tell you about Mark first, because you need to understand what I'm losing here. Mark Davidson wasn't my first boyfriend, but he was my first real love. I met him when I was 28 and working as a dental hygienist at a small practice in downtown Detroit. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep who came in once a month to talk to Dr. Morrison about new products and supplies. The first time I saw him, he was in the waiting room, chatting with the receptionist and making her laugh. He had this smile that was impossible not to return. Bright, genuine, warm. When he saw me walk through to call the next patient, he actually stood up like some kind of old-fashioned gentleman. "Hi," he said. "I'm Mark. I don't think we've met." "Jennifer," I said. "I'm one of the hygienists here." "Well, Jennifer the hygienist, it's very nice to meet you." He came back the next month. And the month after that, each time, he'd find a reason to talk to me. He'd ask about my weekend. He'd tell me funny stories about his job. He'd compliment my scrubs or my hair, or the way I decorated the hygiene room for different holidays. It took him 3 months to finally ask me out. "Listen," he said one afternoon in March, "I know this is probably unprofessional, and if you say no, I completely understand, and I promise I'll never make it awkward. But I really like you, Jennifer. Would you maybe want to get dinner with me sometime?" I said yes, before he even finished the question. We went to dinner that Friday at a little Italian place that's still there today, though I can't bring myself to drive past it anymore. We talked for 4 hours. The restaurant staff was cleaning up around us, and we didn't even notice. We talked about everything: our families, our jobs, our dreams, our favorite movies and books and foods. He told me about growing up in a small town in Ohio. I told him about growing up in Detroit with Karen. He told me about his parents who were still married after 35 years. I told him about losing mine. When he drove me home that night, he walked me to my door like a perfect gentleman. He didn't try to kiss me. He just said, "I had the best time tonight. Can I see you again?" We went out again the next weekend, and the weekend after that. Within a month we were seeing each other 3-4 times a week. Within 3 months he'd told me he was falling in love with me. Within 6 months I'd introduced him to Karen. I remember that meeting so clearly. We met at my apartment for dinner. I was nervous, wanting them to like each other, wanting my sister to approve of this man I was falling for. Karen showed up with wine and flowers, and that big smile she had. Mark showed up with more wine and dessert from my favorite bakery. They hit it off immediately. Mark made Karen laugh with stories from his sales calls. Karen told embarrassing stories about me from childhood. They ganged up on me, teasing me about the time I got my head stuck in a fence when I was 7, the time I accidentally dyed my hair green before school pictures, the time I thought I could cut my own bangs and ended up looking like a disaster. I pretended to be annoyed, but secretly I was thrilled. The two most important people in my life liked each other. After Karen left that night, Mark pulled me close and said, "I love your sister. She's great. I can see why you two are so close." "She liked you too," I said. "That's important to me. Karen's opinion matters." "Well, I'm glad I passed the test." He kissed the top of my head. "Your family's important to me because you're important to me." That's when I knew I was going to marry him. That's when I knew he was the one. We got engaged 2 years after that first dinner date. He proposed at the same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. He'd worked with the owner to close the restaurant early so we could have it to ourselves. There were candles everywhere, a violinist playing in the corner, rose petals on the floor. He got down on one knee and said, "Jennifer, you're my best friend and my soulmate. I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" I said yes through tears. We called Karen from the restaurant, and she screamed so loud Mark had to hold the phone away from his ear. She was at our apartment within 20 minutes, bringing champagne and hugging us both, and crying happy tears. She told Mark she was so happy he was going to officially be her brother. She told me she was so happy I'd found my person. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, about 80 people, most of them family and close friends. Karen was my maid of honor, of course. She wore a beautiful burgundy dress and gave a toast at the reception that made everyone cry. She talked about how she'd watched me go through bad relationships and broken hearts, and how she'd prayed I'd find someone who deserved me. And now I had. Mark was that person. She could see how much he loved me, and she was so grateful he was joining our family. Mark's parents loved me. His mom, Patricia, told me she'd never seen Mark so happy. His dad, Robert, said I was the daughter they'd always wanted. They treated me like family from day one. Karen loved them too. We'd have holiday dinners together, all of us, Mark's parents, me, Mark, and Karen. We were a family. The first few years of marriage were like a dream. We bought a house, a cute 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood. Mark was doing well at work, getting regular raises and bonuses. I loved my job at the dental practice. We took nice vacations to Mexico and California and Canada. We'd have Karen over for dinner at least once a week. Life was good. Life was exactly what I'd always wanted. Then I got pregnant. We hadn't been trying, exactly, but we hadn't been preventing it either. We'd been married for 3 years, and we'd been talking about starting a family. When I saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, I ran downstairs screaming. Mark picked me up and spun me around, and we both cried happy tears. We told everyone right away. Maybe that was our first mistake, telling people before the first trimester was over. But we were so excited we couldn't help ourselves. Karen threw me a baby shower at 10 weeks. Too early, everyone said. But we didn't care. We were going to be parents. Mark's parents bought us a crib. We started decorating the nursery. We picked out names. Oliver, if it was a boy. Emma, if it was a girl. At 12 weeks, we went in for our first ultrasound. I was so excited to see the baby, to hear the heartbeat, to make it all feel real. The tech squirted the cold gel on my stomach and started moving the wand around. Mark held my hand. We watched the screen, waiting to see our baby. The tech was quiet, too quiet. She moved the wand around more, pressing harder. She frowned at the screen. Is everything okay? I asked. Let me get the doctor, she said. I knew something was wrong. I squeezed Mark's hand so hard I probably hurt him. The doctor came in a few minutes later. She looked at the screen, moved the wand around herself, and then turned to us with a sad expression. I'm so sorry, she said. There's no heartbeat. The fetus stopped developing around 8 weeks. Your body just hasn't realized it yet. The fetus, not our baby. The fetus, like it was never real, like it was never Oliver or Emma, like it was never ours. They scheduled a D&C for 2 days later. I went home in shock. I couldn't cry. I couldn't feel anything. I just sat on the couch, staring at nothing while Mark made phone calls, telling everyone what happened, telling them to cancel the baby shower, telling them we wouldn't need the crib after all. Karen came over within an hour of finding out. She didn't say anything. She just sat next to me on the couch and held my hand. When I finally started crying, she held me while I sobbed. She didn't try to tell me it would be okay. She didn't say any of those empty platitudes people say. She just let me cry. The D&C was off. They put me under general anesthesia, and when I woke up I wasn't pregnant anymore. Just like that. One day I was going to be a mom, and the next day I wasn't. My baby was gone, and I didn't even get to say goodbye. I fell into a depression after that. I couldn't go back to work for 2 weeks. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't eat. I just laid in bed and cried and felt empty. Mark tried to be strong for me, but I could see the pain in his eyes too. He'd wanted that baby just as much as I had. Karen was there every single day. She'd let herself in with the spare key we'd given her. She'd bring me food I wouldn't eat. She'd sit with me in the dark. Sometimes we'd talk. Sometimes we'd just sit in silence. She never made me feel like I should be over it. She never told me to move on. She just loved me through it. It took me months to feel like myself again. My doctor prescribed antidepressants. I started therapy. Slowly, very slowly, I started to heal. Mark and I talked about trying again. My therapist thought it might help with the healing process. My doctor said there was no reason we couldn't try. So a year after the first miscarriage, I got pregnant again. This time we didn't tell anyone right away. We waited until after the first trimester. We didn't want to jinx it. We didn't want to get everyone excited again just to disappoint them. At 12 weeks, we had another ultrasound. This time, there was a heartbeat. Strong and steady, the tech said everything looked perfect. Mark and I cried tears of relief. We told our families at 14 weeks. Karen was thrilled. Mark's parents were cautiously optimistic. We started planning again, but more carefully this time. We didn't decorate the nursery yet. We didn't buy a crib. We just took it one day at a time. At 16 weeks, I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. When I wiped, there was blood, not a lot, but enough to scare me. I woke up Mark. We drove to the emergency room. They did an ultrasound. No heartbeat. The baby had died. They didn't know why. Sometimes it just happens, the doctor said. It's not your fault. There's nothing you could have done differently. But knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. This time I had to deliver the baby. They induced labor and I went through hours of contractions, knowing at the end there wouldn't be a crying baby. There would just be silence. I delivered a tiny, perfect baby boy at 4 in the morning. He fit in the palm of Mark's hand. We held him for a while, said our goodbyes, and then the nurse took him away. We named him Oliver, the name we'd picked out for our first pregnancy. We never had a funeral, never told anyone outside our immediate family what we'd named him, but he was Oliver to us, our son who we'd never get to raise. After that second loss, something in me broke. I fell into an even deeper depression than before. I couldn't go back to work at all. I couldn't get out of bed most days. Mark tried to help, but I pushed him away. I pushed everyone away except Karen. Karen was my lifeline during those dark months. She'd come over every single day after work. She'd crawl into bed with me and just be there. Sometimes I'd talk about the babies. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I'd just stare at the wall and she'd sit there with me, not saying anything, just being present. I don't know how to keep living, I told her one particularly bad day. One breath at a time, she said. Just keep breathing, Jen. That's all you have to do right now. She'd bring me groceries. She'd do my laundry. She'd clean my house. She took care of me the way I'd taken care of her when we were kids and our parents weren't home. She held me the way I'd held her through her breakups and disappointments. This was what sisters did. This was what our promise meant. It took me almost 2 years to feel human again. 2 years of therapy, medication, support groups, and Karen's unwavering presence. Mark was patient through all of it, but I could feel the distance growing between us. The losses had changed us both. We didn't know how to be a couple anymore. Only grief-stricken parents of children we'd never know. My therapist suggested we stop trying to have children. The losses were too traumatic. The trying was too stressful. Maybe it was time to accept a different kind of life. Mark agreed, though I could see the sadness in his eyes. He'd wanted to be a father so badly. We decided to focus on our marriage instead. We'd build a life that didn't include children. We'd travel more. We'd focus on our careers. We'd be enough for each other. And for a while at work, we reconnected. The distance started to close. Life started to feel normal again. We'd have Karen over for dinner every week, the three of us laughing and talking like old times. Mark's parents would come visit, and we'd all pretend like everything was fine. And mostly it was fine. That was 5 years ago. 5 years of rebuilding. 5 years of learning to be happy with the life we had, instead of mourning the life we'd wanted. 5 years of thinking we'd made it through the worst thing that could happen to a marriage. I was wrong. The worst was still to come. About 2 years ago, Karen went through a bad breakup. She'd been dating a guy named Tom for about 8 months. She really liked him, thought he might be the one. She'd brought him to our house for dinner a few times. He seemed nice enough, a little boring maybe, but he treated Karen well, and that's all that mattered. Then one day, Tom told Karen he'd gotten a job offer in Seattle, and he was taking it. He didn't ask her to come with him. He didn't suggest trying long distance. He just said he was moving, and it was over. Karen was devastated. She'd thought they were building something serious. She called me crying, and I told her to come over. She showed up with red eyes and a box of Tom's things she'd grabbed from her apartment. In a rage, we sat on my couch, and she cried, and I held her and told her Tom was an idiot who didn't deserve her. Mark came home from work and found us like that. He sat down on Karen's other side and told her stories about his own bad breakups before he met me, trying to make her laugh. It worked a little. By the end of the night, Karen was smiling through her tears. That became the routine. Karen would come over after work, and we'd all have dinner together. Sometimes she'd sleep in our guest room, because she didn't want to be alone in her apartment. Mark would make her laugh. I'd let her cry. We both just tried to be there for her. One night, about 2 weeks into this routine, I went to bed early. I'd had a long day at work, and I was exhausted. Mark and Karen stayed up watching a movie. I remember thinking it was nice that they got along so well. Not all husbands wanted to spend time with their wife's family, but Mark had always treated Karen like his own sister. I woke up around 2 in the morning to use the bathroom. The house was quiet. I figured they'd both gone to bed, but when I came out of the bathroom, I could hear voices downstairs. Quiet voices. Mark and Karen still awake, still talking. I almost went downstairs to join them, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the late hour. Maybe it was the intimate tone of their voices. Maybe it was just instinct. But I stayed upstairs and went back to bed. The next morning, I asked Mark what time he'd gone to bed. "Oh, pretty late," he said. Karen and I got into a deep conversation. She was telling me about her relationship with Tom, all the red flags she'd missed. I was just trying to help her process everything. "That was nice of you," I said. "She's family," he said. "Of course I'm going to be there for her." Karen stayed with us for 2 months. The first few weeks, I was there for most of the late night, but then I started going to bed earlier, tired from work and from the emotional labor of supporting my heartbroken sister. And Mark and Karen would stay up late, talking and watching movies and bonding in a way I didn't think too much about at the time. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The way they'd laugh at inside jokes I wasn't part of. The way they'd exchange looks across the dinner table. The way Karen started dressing a little nicer when she knew Mark would be home. The way Mark started coming home from work earlier on the nights Karen was there. But I didn't see it then, or maybe I didn't want to see it. They were my husband and my sister, the two people I trusted most in the world. It never even occurred to me that something inappropriate might be happening. When Karen finally moved back to her own apartment, she hugged Mark for a long time at the door. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what I would have done without you, without both of you. Any time, Mark. You know we're always here for you." After she left, Mark came to bed and held me. "You have an amazing sister," he said. "We're lucky to have her in our lives." "We really are," I agreed. I didn't know that was the beginning of the end. I didn't know that those late-night conversations had planted something between them. I didn't know that in a few months, they'd start an affair that would destroy everything. For a while, things went back to normal. Karen was back in her apartment. She and I resumed our weekly lunch date. She seemed to be moving on from Tom. She was dating again, though nothing serious. Life continued. Then, about 6 months ago, Mark started acting different. It started with his phone. He'd always been casual about it, leaving it on the counter or the coffee table, or wherever. But suddenly he was protective of it. He'd take it with him to the bathroom. He'd sleep with it under his pillow. When I'd pick it up to hand it to him, he'd almost snatch it from my hands. One night I asked him, "Why are you so weird about your phone lately?" "I'm not weird about it," he said. Work has been sending me a lot of sensitive information, client data, stuff like that. I need to be careful about security." It seemed reasonable. I let it go. Then there were the late work nights. Mark had always been good about being home by 6 or 6:30, but suddenly he was working until 8, 9, 10 p.m., always with a reason. Big project, important client, year-end reports, conference calls with the West Coast. I started eating dinner alone most nights. I'd text him asking when he'd be home, and he'd say, "Soon, probably another hour," but then it would be 2 hours, 3 hours before he walked through the door. When I'd ask about his day, he'd give vague answers. "Busy, stressful, you know how it is." He stopped telling me stories about his coworkers, or funny things that happened at the office. It was like work had become this separate part of his life that I wasn't allowed to access. Then there was the gym. Mark had never been a gym person. In all our years together, he'd go maybe once a month, and only because his company offered free memberships, and he felt guilty about wasting it. But suddenly he was going 4 or 5 times a week. He started looking different too. He lost weight. His clothes fit better. He grew out his hair a little, started styling it. He bought new cologne, something younger and more expensive than the drugstore brand he'd worn for years. He started dressing better for work, buying new shirts and ties, caring about his appearance in a way he never had before. "You look good," I told him one morning, as he was getting ready for work. "Thanks," he said, not quite meeting my eyes, "just trying to take better care of myself." "Well, it's working. You look really handsome." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I should go. Don't want to be late." And then there was the sex, or the lack of it. Mark and I had always had a healthy sex life, not crazy passionate like when we were first dating, but consistent and comfortable and connecting. But over those 6 months, he stopped initiating. When I'd try to start something, he'd have an excuse. "I'm really tired tonight. I have an early meeting tomorrow. My back is killing me from the gym. Can we rain check? I'm just not in the mood." One excuse after another, until I stopped trying. We went weeks without touching each other, months without having sex. I told myself it was just a phase, that all married couples go through dry spells, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. I mentioned it to Karen during one of our Thursday lunches. We were at our usual Italian place, the one where Mark and I had our first date all those years ago. "Mark's been acting weird lately," I said, pushing my pasta around on my plate. "Weird how?" Karen asked, taking a sip of her wine. "I don't know. Distant. He's always working late. He's obsessed with his phone. We barely talk anymore." "Maybe he's going through a midlife crisis," Karen suggested. "Men do that sometimes. It doesn't mean anything serious." "Maybe," I said, but I wasn't convinced. "Has he given you any reason to think he's, I don't know, doing something he shouldn't be doing?" "You mean like cheating?" The word felt heavy in my mouth. "I'm not saying he is. I'm just asking if you have any actual evidence, or if it's just a feeling." I thought about it. Did I have evidence? His phone habits were weird, but that didn't mean anything. He worked long hours, but he'd always been dedicated to his career. The gym thing was new, but wasn't that a good thing? Wasn't I supposed to encourage my husband to be healthy? "No," I said finally. "No evidence, just a feeling." "Then you're probably just being paranoid," Karen said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Mark loves you. He'd never do anything to hurt you. You know that." I wanted to believe her. I tried to believe her, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't go away. Looking back now, I can see that conversation for what it was. Karen was protecting her secret. She was gaslighting me, making me doubt my own instincts, convincing me I was paranoid when my gut was telling me exactly what was happening. She looked me in the eye and told me Mark would never hurt me while she was actively sleeping with him. The betrayal is almost more than I can process, but I didn't know any of that then. So I went home that night and decided to try harder, to be a better wife, to not be so suspicious and paranoid. I made Mark his favorite dinner. I bought new lingerie. I suggested we go away for a weekend, just the two of us. He said he was too busy with work, maybe in a few months. 3 weeks later, everything changed. It was a Tuesday night. Mark called me at 6 p.m. I was in the kitchen, prepping dinner. "Hey honey," he said, "I have to work late tonight. Big presentation tomorrow, and I need to finish the slides. I'll probably be here until 9 or 10. Again? I couldn't keep the disappointment out of my voice. "I know, I'm sorry, but this is important. Big potential client. If we land them, it could mean a promotion." "Okay," I said. "I'll save you some dinner. Thanks. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and looked at the chicken I'd been about to cook. Mark's favorite. I'd planned to make his favorite meal, light some candles, try to reconnect with my husband, who felt like a stranger lately, but he was working late. Again, I put the chicken back in the fridge and made myself a sandwich. I ate it standing at the kitchen counter, looking at our refrigerator covered in photos, our wedding day, vacations we'd taken, holidays with Karen and Mark's parents, all these moments of happiness that felt like they'd happened to different people. After dinner, I started a load of laundry. While I was sorting clothes, I realized I'd forgotten to pick up Mark's dry cleaning. They closed at 9 and it was already 8:30. His office was right near the dry cleaner, so I figured I'd drive over, grab his shirts, and maybe bring him some coffee, since he was working so late. I grabbed my keys and purse and drove toward downtown. It was about a 20-minute drive. I rehearsed what I'd say when I got there, something casual. "Hey, I was picking up your dry cleaning, and thought you might need some caffeine. Not desperate, not clingy, just a wife bringing her husband coffee. I pulled into his office parking lot at 8:55. The building is hard to miss. 5 stories of Lawson steel with the company logo lit up on top. Mark's company occupies the entire 3rd floor. I looked up at it as I got out of my car. Every window on the 3rd floor was dark. Not a single light on. Not one. I stood in the parking lot, staring up at those dark windows, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe they were all in a conference room on a different floor. Maybe the presentation was at a client's office. Maybe there was a perfectly logical explanation for why my husband's entire floor was completely dark when he'd said he was working late. But even as I tried to rationalize it, I knew he wasn't working late. He was somewhere else, doing something else, probably with someone else. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called him. It rang 3 times before he answered. "Hey, honey." His voice sounded slightly breathless, like he'd been exercising. Or, "Hey," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "How's work? Busy?" I heard him moving, like he was walking to a different room. "Really busy. Can't really talk right now. I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to check in. When do you think you'll be home?" "Probably not until 10. Maybe later. This presentation is kicking my ass." "Don't wait up." "Okay, I love you." "Love you too." And then, just before he hung up, in the split second before the call disconnected, I heard it. A sound in the background, a feminine sound, a moan, soft but unmistakable. I stood in that parking lot for a full 10 minutes, just staring at my phone. Did I really hear that? Was it real, or was my paranoid brain playing tricks on me? Maybe it was a TV in the background. Maybe it was someone else in the office. Maybe. But I knew what I'd heard, and I knew what it meant. I got back in my car and drove to the dry cleaner, my hands shaking so badly, I could barely grip the steering wheel. I picked up Mark's shirts on autopilot, the woman behind the counter, asking if I was okay because apparently I looked as devastated as I felt. I said I was fine, paid. I drove home in a daze. The whole way I kept replaying that phone call, the breathlessness in Mark's voice, the sound of him moving to a quieter room, that moan in the background, all of it adding up to something I didn't want to believe, but couldn't deny. Mark got home at 10:15. I was sitting on the couch in the dark, still in my coat, his dry cleaning hanging over the back of the chair. "Hey, honey, you're still up?" He came in through the garage door, carrying his laptop bag. "I thought you'd be asleep by now." "Couldn't sleep," I said. "How was work?" "Exhausting. Really long day." He came over and kissed the top of my head. I smelled perfume on him, not mine. Something floral and sweet. "The presentation is finally done though. Should go well tomorrow." "That's good," I said. My voice sounded robotic even to my own ears. "Are you hungry? I saved you some dinner." "Actually, I grabbed something at the office. One of the guys ordered pizza for everyone. But thanks." He smiled at me. That smile that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made me feel sick. He went upstairs to shower. I stayed on the couch. I heard the water running. I imagined him washing off whoever's perfume he was wearing, washing away the evidence of whatever he'd been doing while he was supposedly working late. When the water stopped, I forced myself to move. I went upstairs, got ready for bed, climbed under the covers next to my husband, who was already half asleep. "Night, Jen," he murmured. "Night," I whispered. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe, wondering who he'd been with, wondering how long this had been going on, wondering if I was crazy for being suspicious, or crazy for not confronting him. The next morning, after Mark left for work, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and made a decision. I needed to know. I couldn't live like this, with this constant suspicion eating away at me. I needed proof, one way or another. I opened my laptop and went to Amazon. I searched for GPS tracker. There were dozens of options, but I found one that had good reviews and was small enough to hide on a car. Magnetic, waterproof, real-time tracking through a phone app. I ordered it with 2-day Prime shipping. Then I sat back and wondered what kind of person I'd become. The kind of person who tracked their spouse, the kind of person who didn't trust their husband, the kind of person who needed evidence instead of faith. But faith wasn't going to give me answers. Faith wasn't going to explain that moan I'd heard, or the dark office building, or the perfume I'd smelled. Only proof would do that. The GPS tracker arrived 2 days later, on a Thursday. It came in a small box, unmarked, no indication of what was inside. I opened it in my bedroom, with the door locked, like I was doing something illegal. The tracker was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of 2 quarters stacked on top of each other. It came with a charging cable and a small instruction booklet. I read through the instructions 3 times to make sure I understood. First, charge it fully. That took about 2 hours. While it charged, I downloaded the app to my phone and created an account. Then I paired the device with the app. It was easier than I'd expected. The whole setup took maybe 10 minutes once the tracker was charged. Now came the hard part. I had to attach it to Mark's car without him knowing. I waited until Saturday morning. Mark went for a run, something he'd started doing as part of his fitness. He left his car keys on the counter and headed out in his running shoes and workout clothes. As soon as the door closed behind him, I grabbed the tracker and his keys and went to the garage. My hands were shaking as I unlocked his car and crawled underneath it. The tracker was magnetic, so it stuck easily to the metal frame underneath the rear bumper. I positioned it as far up and back as I could, somewhere it wouldn't be visible, unless you were specifically looking for it. Then I crawled back out, brushed off my clothes, and went inside. I opened the app on my phone. There it was, a little blue dot on a map, showing Mark's car, sitting in our garage. It worked. I could see exactly where his car was at any moment. I felt sick. I felt like a spy. I felt like I was violating my husband's privacy in the worst possible way. But I also felt something else. I felt like I was finally going to get answers. For the first week, the tracker showed exactly what I'd hoped it would show. Mark went to work. He went to the gym. He went to the grocery store. He came home. Normal places. Normal routine. Nothing suspicious. I started to feel stupid. Maybe I really was just being paranoid. Maybe that moan I'd heard was nothing. Maybe the perfume was from a coworker who hugged him. Maybe. I almost deleted the app. I almost crawled back under his car and removed the tracker, but something told me to wait just a little longer, just to be sure. On the second Tuesday, exactly 1 week after I'd installed the tracker, Mark texted me at 6 p.m., working late again, big meeting with the Morrison account. Will probably be home around 10. I looked at the tracker app. The blue dot showed Mark's car, sitting in the parking lot of his office building. I watched it for the next hour. 7 p.m., still at the office. 7:30, still there. 8 p.m., still there. Then at 8:15, the blue dot started moving. I watched, my heart pounding, as the dot left his office parking lot. It turned left onto Main Street. It headed west, away from downtown, away from our house. Where was he going? I watched the dot travel through familiar streets. This was our neighborhood. These were roads I drove every day. My stomach started to hurt as the dot got closer and closer to our street. Was he coming home early? But no, the dot turned before reaching our house. It turned onto Maple Street, where Karen lived. The blue dot stopped at 2047 Maple Street, Karen's address, the house where my sister had lived for the past year and a half. I stared at my phone, not breathing, telling myself, this had to be a mistake, some kind of glitch in the GPS. There was no reason for Mark to be at Karen's house at 8:15 on a Tuesday night, no reason at all. But even as I tried to rationalize it, I knew, deep down, I knew. With shaking hands, I called Karen. It rang 4 times before she answered. Hey sis, her voice sounded breathy, a little distracted. What's up? Not much, I said, somehow keeping my voice steady. What are you up to tonight? Oh, nothing really, just hanging out at home, probably going to watch some Netflix and go to bed early. I'm exhausted, long week at work, you know. She laughed. What about you? She was lying to my face. Mark was at her house right now, and she was pretending to be alone. Same, I said, just a quiet night in. Mark's working late again. Again? Poor guy, must be so busy. Yeah, I said, he really is. Well, I'll let you get back to your Netflix. Love you. Love you too. Talk tomorrow? Sure, tomorrow. I hung up and looked back at the app. The blue dot was still at 2047 Maple Street. I watched it. 8:30, 8:45, 9 p.m., 9:15, 9:30. At 9:45, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to Karen's house. It took me 15 minutes to get there, driving through quiet streets in our suburban neighborhood. I knew this route well. I'd driven to Karen's house hundreds of times over the past year and a half, for dinners, for wine nights, for sisterly heart-to-hearts. I'd never imagined I'd be driving there to catch my husband cheating on me. I parked a few houses down from Karen's in a spot where I could see her front door, but where my car wouldn't be immediately obvious if someone looked out the window. I turned off my headlights and sat in the darkness, watching. Mark's car was in her driveway, his silver Honda Accord, parked right there for anyone to see, not even trying to hide it. Maybe because it was dark, maybe because Karen's street was usually quiet at this time of night, maybe because they'd gotten so comfortable in their affair that they'd stopped being careful. I sat there for 20 minutes, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. What was I supposed to do? March up to the door and knock? Call Mark and ask him where he was? Call Karen and ask if she had company? Drive home and pretend I hadn't seen anything? Then I saw movement in the front window. Karen's living room window, the big one that faced the street. The curtains were mostly closed, but there was a gap, maybe 6 inches wide, and through that gap, I could see inside. I could see her couch, and on that couch, I could see 2 people. Before I knew what I was doing, I was out of my car and walking toward the house. I stayed in the shadows, careful not to trigger any motion sensor lights. I walked up to that window and looked through the gap in the curtains. Mark and Karen were on the couch. His hands were in her hair. Her hands were under his shirt, touching his bare skin. They were kissing, deep, passionate kissing. The kind of kissing that speaks of practice, of familiarity, of 2 people who've done this many times before. I watched for maybe 30 seconds, though it felt like hours. I watched my husband kiss my sister. I watched my sister kiss my husband. I watched them touch each other like lovers, like this was normal, like this was their routine. Then Mark pulled back and said something I couldn't hear through the window. Karen laughed and said something back. They smiled at each other with such intimacy, such affection, that I felt like I'd been stabbed in the chest. I turned around and walked back to my car. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just walked, got in my car, started the engine, and drove home. I don't remember the drive. I was on complete autopilot. I pulled into my garage, turned off the car, and just sat there in the darkness. I couldn't cry. I couldn't scream. I couldn't feel anything, except a vast, terrible numbness spreading through my entire body. My husband and my sister, the 2 people I loved most in the world, the 2 people I trusted more than anyone, both of them betraying me, both of them lying to my face, both of them destroying everything I thought I knew about my life. How long had this been going on? When did it start? Was it when she stayed with us 2 years ago? Was it before that? How many times had they been together? How many lies had they told me? Mark got home at 11:30. I was sitting on the couch in the living room, all the lights off, just sitting there in the dark with my phone. Hey honey, you're still up? He came in through the garage door, carrying his laptop bag like he really had been at work. I thought you'd be asleep by now. Couldn't sleep, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. How was your meeting? Long. Really long, but productive. I think we're going to land the Morrison account. He came over and kissed the top of my head. I smelled Karen's perfume on him, that sweet floral scent I'd helped her pick out at Macy's 6 months ago. I'm beat. I'm going to take a quick shower and go to bed. Okay. I listened to him go upstairs. I listened to the shower turn on. I listened to him washing off my sister's scent, washing away the evidence of whatever they'd been doing on her couch. He was humming. He sounded happy. After the shower, I heard him get into bed. I waited until I heard his breathing become slow and even. The deep breathing of sleep. Then I got up, grabbed a blanket, and went to sleep in the guest room, the room where Karen had stayed for 2 months, the room where this had probably started. I locked the door and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't cry. I couldn't process what I'd seen. I just lay there, replaying it over and over in my mind. Mark's hands in Karen's hair, Karen's hands under Mark's shirt, the way they'd smiled at each other, the intimacy, the comfort, the obvious practice. This wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was an established affair, maybe months old, maybe even years old, and I'd had no idea. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face anyone, couldn't pretend everything was normal. Mark left at his usual time, gave me a kiss on the forehead, told me to feel better. After he was gone, I pulled out my phone and opened the GPS app. I watched Mark's day unfold on my screen. He went to the office. At noon, he went to a restaurant downtown. At 1 p.m., he went back to the office. 5:30. The dot started moving. I held my breath. The dot went to the gym. The gym Mark had joined 6 months ago, as part of his new fitness routine. He really was going to the gym. The dot stayed there for exactly 1 hour, then headed back to the office. At 7:45 p.m., the dot left the office and headed straight to Maple Street, to Karen's house. Again, I watched the dot sit at 208047 Maple Street for 3 hours. Mark got home at 11 p.m. He smelled like the gym and Karen's perfume, a combination that made me want to vomit. This was his pattern: work, gym or errands, then Karen's house, then home to me with stories about working late, or traffic or client dinners. Lie after lie after lie. I spent the rest of that week gathering evidence. I took screenshots of the GPS tracker, showing Mark's car at Karen's house. Every night I'd watch the blue dot travel from work to Karen's and sit there for hours. I wrote down the dates and times. I started building a case, though I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do with it. Wednesday night, Mark at Karen's from 8 p.m. Thursday night, Mark at Karen's from 7:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. I'd park down the street and watch through that gap in the curtains like some kind of stalker. I watched them have dinner together one night. They'd cook together in her kitchen, moving around each other like they'd done it 1,000 times. They ate at her small dining table, talking and laughing. They looked like a couple. They looked happy. Another night I watched them watch TV together, curled up on her couch. She was wearing one of Mark's old t-shirts, the one from his college that I'd borrowed so many times, it was practically mine. But now Karen was wearing it, in her house, with my husband. One night, Mark showed up at her door with flowers, yellow roses, my favorite flowers, the ones he used to bring me when we were dating. He'd brought them for Karen instead. I watched him present them with a flourish, and I watched her face light up with joy. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him, and they stood in her doorway for a full minute, just holding each other and kissing like they couldn't get enough. Every night I watched them. Every new detail I learned felt like another knife in my back. But I kept watching. I kept gathering evidence. I told myself I needed to be sure, but really I think I was just torturing myself, confirming over and over what I already knew to be true. Meanwhile, Karen kept texting me like nothing was wrong. Miss you, sis. We haven't had lunch in forever. Have you watched the new season of that show we love? I found the cutest dress today and it made me think of you. Love you. Hope you're having a good day. Every text felt like a slap in the face. She was sleeping with my husband and texting me about cute dresses. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I responded to all her texts like everything was fine. Miss you too. Let's plan lunch soon. Send me a pic of the dress. I played along with her charade. I'm still not sure why. Maybe I wanted to see how far she'd take. Maybe I was gathering evidence. Maybe I was just in shock and didn't know what else to do. Our usual Thursday lunch approached. Karen texted suggesting our regular Italian place. I agreed and showed up 15 minutes early, sitting in our usual booth in the back corner. Karen arrived 10 minutes late, rushed and apologetic. Sorry, work was crazy this morning. She hugged me and kissed my cheek like she always did. She looked radiant. Her skin was glowing. Her eyes were bright. She looked like a woman in love. Of course she did, because she was. No worries, I said with a smile. How have you been? Feels like we haven't really talked all week. I know, I'm sorry. I've just been so busy. She sat down across from me and opened her menu. Even though we always ordered the same things, you know how it is. The waiter came, and we ordered. Karen got her usual glass of white wine. I got water. I wanted to be completely sober for this conversation. So what have you been up to? I asked casually, like we were just two sisters catching up. Oh, same old stuff. Work has been busy. Otherwise just home. Netflix. The usual boring single life. She laughed and took a sip of her wine. What about you? How's Mark been? Mark's good, I said slowly. He's been really busy with work lately, working late a lot. Yeah, you mentioned that before. That must be hard, having him gone so much in the evenings. It is. Sometimes I wonder what he's actually doing all those nights he says he's at the office. I watched Karen's face carefully. There was the briefest flicker in her eyes, just for a second. Then it was gone. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, I wonder if he's really working as much as he claims. You know how men can be. Maybe he's out with friends. Maybe he's doing something else entirely. I'm sure he's just working, Jen. Mark's devoted to you. He'd never do anything to hurt you. You really think so? I leaned forward slightly. You think Mark would never hurt me? I know so. You're so lucky to have him. A lot of women would kill for a husband like Mark. He's one of the good ones. I took a sip of my water and looked at my sister, really looked at her, at this woman I'd known for 40, this woman I'd shared a bed with as a child, this woman who'd held my hand through the worst moments of my life, this woman who was now sleeping with my husband, while telling me how lucky I was to have him. Karen, I said calmly, is there anything you want to tell me, anything going on in your life that I should know about? She looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, is there anything important happening that you haven't told me about? Any big news? Anything at all? No, why? What's this about, Jen? I pulled out my phone. I opened the folder where I'd saved all my screenshots. I turned the phone around and showed her the screen. This is from last Tuesday, I said. Mark's car, at your house, from 8:15 p.m. until 11:30 p.m. The color drained from Karen's face. She stared at the phone, then at me, then back at the phone. Jen, I can explain. Don't. I held up my hand. I have screenshots from the past 2 weeks. Every single night. Mark said he was working late. He was at your house. Every single time he lied to me about where he was with you. It's not what you think. How long, Karen? How long have you been sleeping with my husband? She looked down at the table. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. A year and a half. 18 months. That meant it started right around when she moved out of our guest room, right after she'd lived with us for 2 months, crying about Tom, bonding with Mark over late-night conversations I wasn't part of. It started when you were staying with us, didn't it? She nodded, still not looking at me. So while I was taking care of you, feeding you, comforting you, letting you live in my house, rent-free, you were fucking my husband. Jen, please let me explain. It wasn't like that. It just happened. We didn't plan it. We fought it for so long. Oh, you fought it. For how long? A whole week, 2 weeks, before you decided to say fuck it and destroy my marriage. We tried to stop. So many times we tried to end it. But, she finally looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I love him, Jen. I'm in love with him. I've never felt like this about anyone. Those words hit me like a physical blow. She loved him. My sister was in love with my husband. Does he love you? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. So what's the plan? You two just keep sneaking around? Or were you planning to tell me eventually? We were going to tell you. We've been trying to figure out how. We didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me, I repeated slowly. You've been having an affair with my husband for 18 months. You've lied to my face every single day. You've listened to me talk about my marriage problems while you were actively causing those problems, and you didn't want to hurt me. I know how it sounds. Do you, Karen? Do you really? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're a terrible person who destroyed her sister's marriage and is now trying to pretend she had good intentions. That's not fair. Fair. I leaned forward, my voice low and dangerous. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I held your hand through every breakup you ever had? Is it fair that I took you in when Tom left you? Is it fair that I comforted you and supported you and loved you unconditionally while you were planning how to steal my husband. I never planned to steal him. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Karen. You made a choice every single day for 18 months. You made the choice to betray me. You and Mark both decided that your feelings were more important than my marriage, my trust, my entire life. I'm sorry, she said, crying now, mascara running down her face. I'm so sorry, Jen. I never wanted to hurt you. If I could take it back, but you can't, and even if you could, I don't think you would, because you love him, right? You're in love with my husband. So even if you could go back in time, you'd make the same choice, wouldn't you? She didn't answer, but the truth was written all over her face. I stood up. I threw two $20 bills on the table for our meals that neither of us had eaten. Did it start when you were living with us? I asked one more time, needing to hear her say it. Karen looked up at me, with red swollen eyes. She nodded. Was it the whole time? No, just the last few weeks before I moved out. It started about a week before I left. Oh well, that makes it so much better. You only betrayed me in my own home for a few weeks, instead of 2 months. Jen, please, don't ever contact me again. Don't call, don't text, don't show up at my house, don't send me messages through mutual friends. We're done. You're not my sister anymore. That promise we made when we were kids, sisters before misters, it's broken. You broke it, and I will never ever forgive you. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. I made it to my car before I completely fell apart. I sat in the parking lot and cried harder than I'd cried since losing Oliver. 18 years of marriage, gone. 46 years of sisterhood, destroyed. My entire family, my entire support system, my entire life, all of it blown apart by two people who claimed to love me. When I finally stopped crying enough to drive, I went home. I packed a bag with clothes and toiletries. I called my friend Melissa from work. Can I stay with you for a few days? I asked. I can't explain right now, but I really need somewhere to go. Of course, she said without hesitation. Come over whenever. I'll be here. Before I left, I wrote a note for Mark and left it on the kitchen counter where he'd see it as soon as he got home. I know about Karen. I've known for weeks. I have proof. I want you out of this house by the time I get back. Don't call me. Don't text me. We're done. Then I drove to Melissa's house and collapsed on her guest bed. Mark called me 47 times that day. Karen called me 23 times. I didn't answer any of them. I turned off my phone and just lay in that guest bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the fact that my entire life had just imploded. Melissa was a saint. She didn't push me to talk. She brought me food, water, made sure I was physically okay. On the third day, I finally told her everything, about the GPS tracker, about watching them through the window, about the lunch with Karen where she admitted to an 18-month affair. What are you going to do? Melissa asked, when I'd finished. Divorce him, I said. I can't stay married to him, not after this. And Karen, I meant what I said. She's dead to me. I stayed with Melissa for 4 days total. Then I drove back to my house to face whatever was waiting for me. Mark's car was gone from the driveway. Good. I told him to leave, but when I opened the front door, I saw him sitting on the couch, waiting for me. The confrontation that followed, the conversations with lawyers, the divorce process, the months of pain and therapy and healing. All of that is another story. The ending is simple though. Mark moved in with Karen. They went public with their relationship. Last month they got engaged. And me, I'm learning to build a new life. One without liars and cheaters. One where I can trust the people around me. It's not easy. Some days are harder than others. But I'm free. And that's worth everything. Because Mark and Karen can have their affair turned relationship. They can have their engagement, and their wedding, and their happily ever after, built on lies. I'll have my integrity. I'll have my self-respect. I'll have the knowledge that I didn't betray the people who loved me. And in the end, that's all that really matters.